are called power wheels. There's many different kinds. You'll probably heard of kick wheels. You may have used a kick wheel. The nice thing about these is they have a lot of power. They really are just production wheels. That's what they were built to be. We use them in the studio because they're pretty much indestructible. Some of these wheels are over 20 years old. They still function very well. So, but the way they work is by this foot pedal. And if this foot pedal works like a sewing machine does, or use the sewing machine, the more you push it down, the faster the thing goes. The difference is when you push this down, it stays wherever you push it down, so you actually rock it back and forth with your foot. So just so you know how that works and just kind of familiarize yourself with it. So when you sit down here, first thing, and just to be very careful about, never assume that this wheel was turned off correctly. It's like a kiln. Never assume they're hot or cold, then you'll never burn yourself on it. So don't come here and put your bucket of water or a brick or something on this and turn the wheel on, because if it was set wrong, it will just take off when you first start it. The on-off switch is on the side here, so you turn it on and the red light will come on, or a light will come on. So if someone did this wrong, or I had someone come in the other day and they set the pedal like this, and they put their bucket of water on and went like this, and guess what happened?
Everyone got a shower.
Yeah. So first of all, it's upside down, so you don't do that, and just don't put anything on here until you know it's working correctly. All right. And like I said, just kind of get yourself familiar with. Like I said, if you just push it down, it stays down, or whatever position it's in. So you work it back and forth this way. We also have something I prefer. We have a brick. You wonder why these bricks are sitting around here. The brick is there to keep your feet at the same level as you're throwing. So good for your equilibrium there. All right. So that's the foot pedal. That's how that works. These are called splash pan. And the way this works is you take the big side of this, and it goes on the back of the wheel, and then the other side goes in the front. You can see it's got its little cutout on the bottom. So what you do is you put it here. The base of this thing is square also, and it slides right in place. The front side goes on just the opposite, and you can see these holes, there's little dimples on the other side of this. When you put this on, it just locks into the little holes, and the whole thing's in place. So put it on there, start the wheel up, make sure you got it on right. If it makes a noise or something, you hear something clunking like that, it's just, this isn't on correctly. Just redo it and you should be fine. Okay, this is called the wheel head. And these little marks on it here are called centering rings. So we don't want to make it too easy for you, so we cover those up. Right? These little pins hold this. And what's this called? A bat. Okay? Remember, anything you put on the wheel to carry or move your clay around is called a bat. So bat pins and the bat, and they sit on here like so. You can use it without the bats. It's up to you. Most people prefer to use a bat. These black ones, by the way, if you look at them really close, they have a nice round hole and a kind of an elongated hole. So they fit a variety of sizes here. So if you're using the black bats, they also tend to be a little sloppy because of that hole. So what you do is take a little teeny piece of your clay and just kind of work it in that bigger hole, and it'll keep it from clicking around. Clicking doesn't bother you, just don't do that. All right. Next thing is your clay. And what I want you to do is take that clay. You see I'm just patting this so it turns to the palm of my hand. And by doing that, what it's going to give me is this kind of avocado shape. Somebody said it looks like a potato. I don't care what fruit or vegetable you want. The idea is it's got a slightly rounded bottom and a narrow top. Okay. You want it slightly rounded. You don't want it flat on the bottom because it won't stick when you throw it down. Now, the first thing you're going to do is throw this down with enough force to really stick it to this bat or to the wheel head. And that's where those centering rings come in handy. So if you're having trouble kind of making it center, do this. Be one with yourself, make a perfect circle. Okay. and it's kind of a target for you, so you can throw this down and get yourself started. So, got my bat nice and dry, my clay's dry. Throw it on there. I know how close you get to center. You can see this is off a little bit here. So what I'm going to do is just kind of pat the clay and then pat it down a little bit so it really sticks. And you can see I'm right within, pretty close within that circle that I just drew there.
Try to make it to the middle.
Try to make it be in the middle, yeah. Like I said, you need some water. Trying to cut off wire. All right, so once you got everything together here, you're ready to start actually throwing on the wheel. And the first thing you do is get the clay in your hands nice and wet. Like so. All right. So as I'm doing this, watch my hands, but at the same time, watch my body positioning on it, because so much of working on the wheel is how you place your body. If you sit here and you're nice and comfortable and everything's nice and easy, you're doing it wrong. Okay? You can ask anybody who's worked on the wheel. It's an uncomfortable feeling because it's probably, first of all, it's not the position you normally sit in, especially for any length of time, but it will help you to get your clay centered. And that's today, for most of you, it's probably the most challenging thing you'll do today, try to center the clay. Nice and wet, I squeeze in at the bottom of the clay and lift. Look at my hands right away, you can see I'm using primarily the muscly part of my hand, kind of this L shape here on my hand. My fingers are just there because they're stuck to that muscly part of my hand. It's a good thing, but I'm not using my fingers to do this, I'm using this. Look at my body position. I can feel my hip bones here. So I'm in this close, sitting this much over my clay. Remember the first time I threw, my instructor said to the class, if you leave here today and you don't have clay on your chest, you're not leaning over far enough. Okay, so I'm going to check all your chest today before you leave. Fair warning. Okay, so squeeze in and lift. This is called coning the clay. And the idea of coning the clay is simply to make the clay thinner. It's easier to center a small amount of clay than a great big giant piece of clay. So I'm making the clay thinner, but I'm also completing the wedging process. Remember, the wedging is aligning the clay particles so that they work better. People say, how tall does this have to be? It isn't a matter of how tall it is. It's a matter of getting the clay up there so you at a comfortable amount so you can do the next step. So the next step is actually bring it down in the center. And I do that by pushing with my left hand on one side and my right on the other. So on the side and then kind of on the top and pushing down. So I'm pushing in and down. And again, you see I'm not using my fingers, I'm using the muscly part of my hand, more the palms of my hand. Pushing in, pushing down until you can barely feel the clay moving. If you can't feel the clay moving, I'm telling you that you're a centered piece of clay. And you can tell that quickly just by if you hold your hand still and you see how it's touching evenly all the way around. If it's off center, usually it's pretty obvious. And if you come down and it's off center, what you do is go back to the cone, lift, you'll always do that, yes. You'll always bring it to a cone. And then, again, on the side and on the top, in and down, you get a centered piece of clay.
There will be a lot of big supports over there that we actually use.
Okay. From here, what I'm going to do, just cross my thumbs over the top, and it's going to give me a starting point. And the starting point is, we just want to make a little dent in the clay. The starting point is going to be so that I can start opening the clay. First thing you have to do is put a bottom on it. So everybody just do this. Right there looking. I'm going to use my hands just like this. Boy Scout thing. hold it with your other hand. Right? You never use one hand on the clay. You always use your hands together when you're touching the clay. I'm holding it like this. I squeeze myself with my elbows and I lean forward and push down. Notice as I did that, I didn't move with the clay. I held my hands firmly in a way that the clay couldn't move me. If you move with the clay, you'll be sitting here doing this all day long. You'll just be rocking around with the clay. You're letting this little 2 pounds of clay push you around. So this in and down, using your hands together and your elbows in tight to make the bottom of the piece. And ideally what you want is the clay to be between about a 1.25 inch thick on the bottom. A lot of times you can't just look and see what that is. So a simple thing you can do is put some slip on your needle, push it in and kind of wiggle it around here. And when you wiggle it around, you don't have too much water in there. When you wiggle it around, you can see, you can see how it wipes the clay off, so I can see how thick that bottom is. So if it's too thin, or if you go like this and you see black, you just made a flower pot. All right, so you don't want to go that deep with it. So that's in the acceptable range there. Now the next thing is to actually open this so you can put a bottom on the piece. Use your hands the same way. And what I'm going to do now, instead of going down, I'm going to pull toward myself. A little water in there, in, and now come out with the clay. So I'm pulling toward myself. So you establish the bottom. Once you do that, now I'm going to take my same finger, get it a little wet again, and I'm going to come back the opposite way. You want to go back and forth a couple of times so that you smooth the bottom, but you also thicken the bottom and stress it in several different ways. Remember I talked about the clay having a memory? If you just open this clay like that and then start raising it, what happens is as it's dried, you get cracks in the bottom called S-cracks because it remembers it's open just one way. So I go from the middle out and then from the outside back in. I do it several times. Make the bottom nice and strong and also nice and flat. Okay? Once you get the bottom in there and established, you're ready to start raising the side walls. Alright? The way you do that is by using your left hand inside, your right hand outside. I'm going to push out with the left and in with the right. Imagine this sponge here is this wall of clay. So push out, push in. It's going to give me this little bead of clay here, and that's what I'm going to raise. Okay? As you're doing this, these are Western wheels, so they go counterclockwise here. Or is that? Yeah, it's counterclockwise. So imagine this is you're working on the face of a clock. So you get 3 and 6 o'clock is the best place for you to work. If you go beyond it, you're sitting too far over the clay. If you're working on this side, the clay is coming at you. The clay can't respond correctly. It needs to go through your fingers. So you work right approximately this angle here. Get the clay nice and wet. Pushing in, pushing out. Notice the speed of the wheel. I slowed the wheel down and lift. And then as you get to the top, you kind of just back off the pressure and follow through. Get the clay wet again. Push in, push out. No, sorry, I can't talk to you when I'm pulling clay up.
Yeah. Hold all questions till the end, right?
Okay. Notice that as I'm doing that, even though I'm using my hands, one inside, one outside, I do everything I can to keep my hands together. That way I'm constantly referencing that I know exactly where the other hand is and what it's doing. So that was the second time. For most of the clay things that you make on the wheel, the ideal amount to raise it is 3 times. So I'm going to push in, push out again, and lift. As I'm doing this, you see the little bead of clay, but also look where my elbows are. Everything's in nice and tight. As a matter of fact, I'm actually throwing my body weight against my right arm to keep it steady. Because the thing you don't want to do is follow the clay. You're controlling the clay or trying to control the clay. Also, notice what happened right at the top there? A very common mistake that people make when they first start throwing is they put their hands on the clay too fast and take them off too fast. And you can get a perfectly centered piece of clay. If you take your hands off too fast, you'll throw it off. That's what happened right here. See how it's a little wonky on the top there? So what I'll do is I'll follow through right at that point where I did that and take my hand off slowly. See how I corrected it. Watch the difference. Okay? So it's a centered piece of clay, but it's off because of the way I did that.
And you're not pulling at the edge. You stop right near.
Right. The edge, when you come to the top here, it's just a follow through. But see how it goes right to center. Right? As you're doing this, look at your clay too. Notice how you see these nice kind of concentric rings, and I can see them on the inside too. What you don't want to see as you're throwing is this kind of stuff. As soon as you see spirals, you can see what happened to the top of this because of that spiral. You're not compressing the clay evenly all the way up. You can correct it by using a rib. And just any of the straight edge ribs. Some people use the plastic ones. I even use a credit card. For a lot of you, it's probably the best use of a credit card too. Right? Myself included. So what you want to do is take this straight edge. So I want to straighten this thing up. The straight edge is on the outside. I'm using my left hand inside, and I'm actually pushing together or pushing out on the rib as I lift. And you can see what that does here, and how it straightens the sides up, and then also took that little mark out and things like that. That's how you do that. If you've done that correctly, you'll notice that the clay itself is nice and centered, but the top's off. See how the top is higher on one side and the other? You correct that easily by using your needle. And the way I'm going to do that is hold the needle somehow comfortably. Use my left hand inside, and slowly I'm going to work this needle in until I just feel it touch my finger here. Okay? If you do it like this and you bleed, you did it too fast. Right?
The bleeding is the clue.
It should take about 5 or 6 revolutions for this thing to actually be cut off. So there I put my little counter on there. So light touch. It was 6 revolutions if you're counting. I touched my finger and then just lift it, and you can see what it does. It makes the top nice and even. Got a little off round, and an error, I should say, not a mistake, that people make when they first start on the wheel is you got to remind you're not hand building anymore. So this is off a little bit. So many times I'll see people go, what's off here, and they'll go like this, and they'll go like this. That's what you do when you're hand build. Now you're using a wheel. You're using this tool. So you can see by doing that, I didn't do any good. But as the wheel spins, and I hold this carefully in place, so I smooth this all off. Okay. Now, the last tool that you'll use is this. Remember what this is called?
It's a knife.
Stick.
Wedge.
No.
A trimming tool.
Wood knife.
The last tool we'll use.
How about the trimming stick?
Stick.
We were going all around it.
Okay. And you notice this tool has a sharp side and a kind of a blunt side. So what you want to do is, first of all, you hold this like a pencil, so you hold it comfortable. Whenever you use a tool on the wheel, again, you always use two hands on it. So I'm going to use my hand on the top of this, because it's going to have a tendency to cut in like this. So I'm going to take this tool, start about 3/4 of the way down with the sharp side against the piece, and push it straight down. Again, it's a little bit at a time. I didn't go in there and jam it down there real fast. A little bit at a time, slowly work down until you get to the wheel head. So it trims away the excess clay. You squeeze a little water in there, make a little like a moat. And then take this tool now on its side. When you cut off, the water will act as a release, so you can just peel this clay right away. And then come back and do it a second time. Never try to trim it all off the first time. And that's why this is called a trimming stick. So you trim away the excess clay, but you can also do a little shaping with it. You notice how as I trimmed, I kind of pushed and straightened this thing up. After you do that, sometimes, especially the first time you do that, it's not unusual to kind of bump the piece, make it a little wonky, things like that. So I'll just go back quickly with the rib. Really just trying to straighten it up at this point. Always go back and take off any sharp edges, any rough edges, make them nice and smooth. And then lastly, I'll use this tool, again holding it like a pencil, but this time I'm going to take the cut side pointing up so that I can come in and trim on the shadow line. And the shadow line does two things. Visually, it separates the piece from whatever it's standing on, but also there's another purpose for it. What it does is it gives you a starting point for using your cutoff wire. The way you use your wire, take it between your hands, put it between your fingers like so, and then you can just wrap your hands around it, push down with your thumbs, come to the back of the piece. What I'm going to do is just come forward so I can feel it touch, give the wheel just a little bit of a move to cut through. So you cut through in this fan shape like this. You can see it cut that off cleanly. Then clean my bat up so I don't have that extra junk around. And dry your hands up a little bit. What you do is you touch your piece, do a little twist and lift, and you should be able to just pick it up and then move it aside. Okay? This is what I want you to do for your first assignment on the wheel. Make cylinders. Taller than it is wide. And what I'm looking for is straight walls, nice smooth edges, and nice flat bottom if you look on the inside. Okay? When you're ready to do your next piece, you can either leave this little, it's what, a 1/16 of an inch thick or so, or you can just take your tool on its side and cut it off. You can see how quickly it comes off. Just make sure this is dry before you put your next piece of clay on. Now, as you start, I want you to do 3 pieces before I'll even answer any questions. Figure out what you're doing with those 3 pieces. Think through the steps. But remember all the tools, because you want to use your tools. Even if you make a mistake on something, use the tool. So even if you tear the thing apart, still go in with the trim stick. You use that trim stick on it and the cutoff wire so you can get used to using the tool. But you don't want to have this perfect piece and then go, oh my God, I never used a trim stick before. What are you doing? And you ruin it because you've never used that stick before. So go through all the motions, use all your tools. Okay? This, by the way, is for the entire class. At the end of the day, Make sure your wheels are nice and clean and everything else around it. And all this slip that you have in here, don't pour this slip in the sink. Last week when you guys left, the sinks didn't drain. There was so much slip in the sinks. So you pour off the little bit of water. If there's slip in the bottom, it goes into the slip barrels. Okay?